This is ManuS and welcome back to the next part of the MTG Arena set review for the new set Ravnica Allegiance, and now it's time to talk about the first half of the blue cards. But before we get started, make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification icon to not miss out on the rest of the series. And please consider whitelisting YouTube on your ad block to help support the content. And now on to the blue cards. Okay. So first we have Restos Admonition. This is basically a worse repulse, not a constructed card, but in limited it should still be fine. It's not very good without the addendum, but getting a decent tempo boost for 3 mana without investing a card basically can still be worth it. So I would assume it's at least a fine playable, a fine filler in limited, maybe even a bit better than that. Next we have Benthic Biomancer. This is a pretty sweet one. First of all, in limited, this is a pretty solid card. You get a 1/1 for 1 that for 2 mana turns into a 2/2 and gives you a loot, which is not amazing, but pretty solid. So in limited, I think this will usually make your deck. I'm not sure if it is quite good enough to see play in standard. It might be, but overall investing 3 cards into a 2/2 that loots isn't that great. So it's a bit on the underpowered side. I guess if you have other ways to give it additional +1/+1 counters to benefit more from the looting effect, it might get a bit better, but it's still not too exciting, so I feel like it's a bit too weak for constructed. Even though it is a merfolk, which ups its relevance a bit. Next we have Chillbringer, another clear limited only card, but a pretty solid one. First of all, we get a 5-cost 3/3 flyer, which is pretty solid in limited usually. And in addition, we get to tap an opposing creature that doesn't untap during the next untap step, so also gives us a pretty good tempo boost. All in all, looks like a very good common for limited. Next we have Clear the Mind. This card not very impressive. Seems pretty irrelevant and limited, and even in constructed there's only a very small off chance that this is somehow needed as a sideboard card as Graveyard Hate. Maybe, but even that is not very likely, so I don't think this card is going to do a whole lot anywhere. Next we have Code of Constraint, another sweet limited trick, not a constructed card though. Target creature gets -4/-0 until end of turn, and you draw a card, and with addendum it taps that creature and it doesn't untap during the next untap step, which obviously usually makes the -4/-0 pretty irrelevant. So this is more of a do one or the other thing kind of card. Either it's an instant trick that in combat will cripple the opposing creature and allow you to blow it out with blocks or after they blocked, or it's just kind of a tempo thing for free in a similar fashion as the bounce spell Restos Admonition that we talked about before, except that then it is a bit worse. So you usually want to try and get the a free blowout value in combat with this, and the other one is more of a last resort type of deal that will come up less, because then it's worse than Restos Admonition actually, most of the time anyway. So yeah, nothing too exciting, but an okay trick. Bit surprised that it's an uncommon, because we've seen equally good cards in common basically. But yeah, it is what it is. Next we have Core Commando, clearly only a limited card and not a very good one at that. 2 toughness means that it usually trades down with 2 drops, which is awkward. And yeah, 3-cost 2/3s aren't great, and 3-cost 3/2s aren't really better, especially if there's a lot of 2 power 2 drops. So I don't think this is going to be very good. It might make it in your deck if you just desperately need to fill out your curve, need another creature and or another 3-drop. But yeah, not great. Next we have Essence Capture, basically the reverse Essence Scatter kind of a nice play there on the Essence Scatter. Yeah, you counter target creature spell, and in addition you put a +1/+1 counter on up to one target creature you control. So this is immediately going to be a nice upgrade to Essence Scatter in the mono blue fish, the mono blue tempo deck in standard, and might even make this a bit more main deckable again than Essence Scatter was, since the +1/+1 on your 1-drops on turn 2 is actually a pretty nice and fairly relevant boost here. So yeah, definitely a neat little upgrade for that deck. Outside of that, it's not very interesting, since the double blue is very restrictive and the +1/+1 counter is not worth that much in most decks that want Essence Scatter outside of the mono blue tempo deck. But for that specific deck, it's sweet. And in limited, of course, if your deck can support the double blue, an Essence Scatter type effect is usually a pretty good limited card, and that in conjunction with the +1/+1 counter synergies in Simic, as long as the double blue is not too restrictive for your deck, it seems like a nice limited edition. Next we have Eyes Everywhere. This is kind of an interesting card. First, when you play it, you just get a bit of a scry on your upkeep, so kind of like Search for Azcanta in a way. And yeah, once you have 6 mana, you can go ahead, use those 6 mana to swap Eyes Everywhere with a non-land permanent of your choice. So it turns into kind of a control magic. As long as your opponent doesn't have blue, they can't do anything about it. If they have blue, the thing that you're stealing better be better than everything you have, because otherwise you give the opponent the opportunity to just steal back your best card in return, which is really not where you want to be. But yeah, I think in limited this should be pretty good. Even if your opponent can pay the blue, it's not awful with the Scry 1 on your upkeep, it's just a bit underpowered, but in a lot of scenarios, getting to use this on 6 mana should be pretty powerful. So yeah, seems like a solid to good limited card to me, but nothing else. Next we have Fairy Duelist, the 1/2 flying with flash, and when it enters the battlefield, target creature an opponent controls gets -2/-0. This would be another interesting card for the mono blue tempo deck, but since it already has Merfolk Trickster, which usually has a better enter the battlefield effect with the tap and remove abilities, and is a 2/2, even though it doesn't have flying, and also is a relevant creature type in Wizard or Wizard's Retort, all make this outshine this, and the other 2-drop is Marauders, which are also better, so this is just not gonna cut it in Constructed. But in Limited, this seems like a very nice trick slash small evasive 2-drop, so yeah, wouldn't mind having this in my draft deck. And next we have Gateway Sneak, another pretty sweet Gates Matter card, kind of a throwback to Ophidian. So basically you get a better Ophidian in the sense that it deals damage and draws your card rather than one or the other, and has the upside of, if you play a gate that turn, it gets to hit the opponent for free, cannot be blocked, and draws your card. So even with just a few gates in your deck, this should be pretty good, and there might be other ways for you to push it through. So should usually make most blue decks in Limited, I think. And in the like gate heavy decks, it's a bit of a powerhouse. But yeah, not a constructed card. Next we have Humongous. That's kind of a cool name play they went for there. But yeah, it's not a particularly good card. It's a 5-cost 2/5 hexproof in Limited. Maybe there's a couple of ways to make it big enough and abuse it. I can't think of anything too worthwhile for Limited right now. But yeah, a 2/5 hexproof, just not that great. In Dominaria we had the 6-cost 4/5 hexproof. That was pretty good, especially because there was also good ways to yeah, make it into a really problematic threat with Flight of Fancy. Not Flight of Fancy, the 1 mana +1/+1 flying. But yeah, this is definitely a lot worse in terms of base stats, because the high health, high toughness is not that great. So yeah, this seems more of a bad filler in most cases. Next we have Mass Manipulation, quadruple blue and double X, gain control of target creature and/or planeswalker. So yeah, this for 6 mana, this gets you a planeswalker or a creature of your choice from the opponent, and for 8 mana it gets you 2. These are probably the 2 most realistic modes in Limited. In Constructed, maybe in like the super late game it can do more. Yeah, in Limited this is still really powerful, especially because there's not much counterplay. You cannot destroy it like a Persuasion / Mind Control that costs 5 and they can just kind of bounce or destroy. So this costing 1 more, but not having counterplay, balances it out pretty well there. And if you ever cast this for the 2 best cards, like creatures and/or planeswalkers your opponent has, the game just ends. So yeah, a limited bomb. And even in Constructed, I can see this being a potential like one-off sideboard card for some matchups in control decks and stuff like that, because it is a really powerful effect, even though it is very costly. Next we have Mesmerizing Bandit, or Bandit. It's a 5-cost 4/5. When it enters the battlefield, you create 2/2 illusion creatures. When the illusions block a creature, that creature doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. And Mesmerizing Bandit has hexproof as long as you control an illusion. I don't see this being good enough for Constructed, but in Limited this is a pretty strong card. Like, first of all, a 5-cost 4/5 hexproof is pretty good, and second of all, the 2 additional blockers / lockdown bodies are pretty nice. But since it has no evasion or anything else, it's still not that exciting. Seems surprisingly weak for a mythic rare, but yeah, still gonna make your deck, I think, almost 100% of the time in Limited. Next we have Persistent Petitioners. For 1 and tap, target player puts the top card of their library into their graveyard, and tapping 4 advisors you control, target player puts the top 12 cards of their library into their graveyard. And you can play as many copies of Persistent Petitioners as you want in a deck. I don't think this is ever going to be a thing in Constructed, but in Limited this could lead to a pretty strong mill deck. Not sure if there's any other advisors in the set. I don't think there's any in blue, at least. So yeah, you might just need multiple copies of this. There might be other advisors that I can't think of right now, but yeah, if you have a bunch of these, it could be a thing, because the effect is very powerful and kills your opponent really fast, but drawing 4 copies of these is a lot, so seems very gimmicky and unlikely to pull off. So I doubt this is going to do a whole lot. But then again, a 2-cost 1/3 is also an okay blocker a lot of the time, so it might just end up in your deck for that. And last but not least, for the first part, we have Precognitive Perception, the 5-cost instant that draws you 3 cards, and if you play it in your main phase, you get to scry 3 and then draw 3 cards. I think this is as close as we're gonna get to Tidings these days, since I think they at some point stated that they think Tidings is too good for Standard, they won't print it again. So drawing 3, scrying 3 and then drawing 3 is close to drawing 4 random cards. And the fact that you can play it as an instant just to draw 3 is definitely a nice addition in terms of flexibility, and this is definitely going to be pretty relevant in Standard, I think, especially with the new green enchantment. I think I forgot the name, like Exploration, the one that untaps your lands at the beginning of your end step. So yeah, this is going to be a pretty powerful thing in Constructed, I think, in terms of card draw, other than like Expansion or explosion, like the expansion explosion split card, the half that draws your cards. Since yeah, card draw outside of Teferi isn't that powerful right now, and this is definitely at the top of potential card draws in Constructed, from what I can think of. And yeah, in Limited, of course, this is also really powerful, and is definitely a first pick if you see this, and gonna be really strong in any non-aggressive Limited deck, basically. Okay, this concludes part 1 of the blue cards. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments what you think about my assessments, and let's have a discussion about the cards. The interesting part is going to start once we get to the multicolor cards, I think, since the amount of monocolor cards is really not that high in that set, because it's so guild focused, so that all the goodness is located there. So we'll get there soon. Okay, if you enjoyed it, hit the like button, share it with your friends, let me know in the comments what you think. And of course, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet, turn on the notification icon to not miss out on the rest of the series, and please whitelist YouTube on your ad block to help support the channel. That would really mean a lot. That's it again for this time. I'm your host ManuS. I thank you for watching, and I see you tomorrow with part 2 of the blue cards. Bye!